Hello! I'm back on my couch, and if you've been watching this channel for a while, you know that I only host from my couch for very special games. And this time, we're talking about this guy. This is Sora, the central figure of the Kingdom Hearts series. You see, it's been about 10 years since Kingdom Hearts 3D, Dream Drop Distance, launched here in the States. But it's not just the 10-year anniversary of the game. It's also my 10-year anniversary of covering games as a professional. Kingdom Hearts 3D was the first game I was ever paid to cover, and I've been doing it ever since, either in a part-time or full-time capacity. So this guy and that game really mean a lot to me. It marks a turning point in my career, and it's an example of the Kingdom Hearts team just trying something really different. I think they succeeded in making a game that really stands out from the rest of the series. So let's break down those dreams, those drops, and those distances, and talk about what makes Kingdom Hearts 3D so different. There's another D word for you. Lucky for me, Kingdom Hearts 3D later got an HD port to PS4, so I didn't have to resort to, shall we say, creative methods for getting my footage for this video. Wait a minute, what's that? Really, Square? A watermark? You know, you try to play a game honestly. Well, anyway, we will not be endorsing piracy here at Framework. In any case, this is the version of the game I played most recently, and it's almost entirely the exact same game. It still tells the story of Sora and Riku taking their Mark of Mastery exam in 7 sleeping worlds. But if you've only played the original, you may notice some differences. Namely, it's not 3D in the stereoscopic sense of the 3DS. But the 3Ds that we need to talk about absolutely still apply. Series creator Tetsuya Nomura explained them in an interview with Nintendo Power. Quote, "The story for this installment takes place in a world submerged in sleep. And from that sleep we derived dream. Drop, from the phrase drop off to sleep, is our name for the system in which players alternate between control of Sora and Riku. Since Sora and Riku are progressing through the story on different storylines, we chose distance to express the gulf between them." Thank you for the explanation, Mr. Nomura. We'll take it from here. And honestly, I think we can take it even further. But let's start with those sleeping worlds that Nomura talked about. You see, one of the goals of this game was to present completely new Disney worlds. In fact, it's the only game in the series since the original to do that. So we get La Cité des Cloches for Hunchback of Notre Dame, The Grid for Tron Legacy, Prankster's Paradise for Pinocchio, Country of the Musketeers for The Three Musketeers, and Symphony of Sorcery for Fantasia. What's beautiful about this selection is that even things that sound the same on paper are totally different here. If you think you've been to any of those worlds before, you haven't. Kingdom Hearts 2 did have a Tron level called Space Paranoids, but The Grid takes place years later, where Tron himself has become an evil program named Rinsler. And in fact, the climax of that level hinges upon him remembering the past adventures he and Sora had together.
Tron!
Conversely, Symphony of Sorcery might feature Master Yensid's tower, but it's set years before you ever visited. It shows Mickey during his own apprenticeship, before he became the hero we know from the main timeline. Likewise, Prankster's Paradise is set before the events of Kingdom Hearts 1, so Jiminy Cricket and Pinocchio are strangers to Sora. Even though Riku's half of the story takes place within Monstro, and don't you worry, we'll talk more about that later, it's still a prequel. Even the original worlds we've seen before offer totally new sections to explore. Traverse Town gets a glamorous 4th district and a Rube Goldberg-style post office. Because of the dream logic, we can manipulate the fabric of reality in these worlds too. Special moves called reality shifts are present in every level, letting you grind along faith lines, unleash comic book attacks, and even hack into your enemies. Often, these are integral parts of the big boss fights. You know, I'm something of a hacker myself. Now, we can't mention dreams without talking about the Dream Eaters, especially since covering them was how I first got paid. You don't fight Heartless in these worlds. Instead, you fight Dream Eaters, monsters that feed off of the good dreams in these sleeping worlds. They're themed after animals, so you'll face everything from little dogs to straight up dragons. And as you might expect, some of the biggest and baddest ones also serve as the final bosses of several levels.
Take this! Yeah!
Conversely, you can recruit the good Dream Eaters that eat nightmares to your side. In lieu of having typical party members, they serve as pets, or personas, or Pokemon. That was certainly the way I thought of them when the game first came out. You can create every single one you come into contact with, making better and better spirits as you progress. In some ways, this process feels like Pokemon evolutions or regional variants. Compare this standard Meow Wow to the Katanuki, a new spirit that was introduced in 3D HD. See the upgrade? The further you get in the game, the tougher Dream Eaters you face, and the stronger ones you can add to your party. Typical RPG progression stuff to be sure, but still scratches that itch for collecting Pokemon. Thanks to the split story between Sora and Riku, it was easy to take that metaphor further and think of their campaigns as dual versions of Pokemon games. Red and Blue, Gold and Silver, Ruby and Sapphire, the list goes on. One key feature even predates Pokemon. Kingdom Hearts 3D lets you bond with your spirits by petting them and playing with toys. Pokemon-Amie didn't come around until X and Y a whole year later. And while Dream Drop Distance isn't the first instance of status effects in the Kingdom Hearts series, they are very abundant here. The Pokemon vibes are reinforced as you get incidentally frozen, or poisoned, or blinded. Okay, so that's 1D down, and before we go any further, I am obligated by the law of the internet to make this joke. 3D's nuts. Okay, I said it, we can move on. Back to you, me. Thanks, me. Actually, this sort of handoff is a great segue for the drop mechanic. We'll talk more about how the campaign is split up in a moment, but suffice it to say that while Sora and Riku have distinct storylines over the course of the game, you can freely switch between them. Drops occur at a few set times, but otherwise they happen when your drop gauge runs out, encouraging you to move through these levels quickly. We'll talk more about that in a little bit too. You can also freely drop from the game's menus, giving your parallel partner bonuses based on how well you performed on your side of the story. Leapfrogging each other as you complete each world one side at a time is a great pathway through the game. Compare this to Birth by Sleep, the PSP entry that predates Dream Drop Distance by 2 years. That game actually has 3 heroes, but Aqua, Terra, and Ventus have 3 separate storylines that simply overlap now and again. Dream Drop Distance lets you shift between 2 sides of the story at any time, instantly picking up where the other left off, even in the middle of combat.
Yeah, hey, yeah.
Honestly, this is still technically impressive. Should we be getting perks like that every time we switch? Oh, I guess that would just be treating myself. Just as you drop between characters, you also drop into each world on your first visit. These drops, called dives, might not look like much at first. By this point, we'd already seen plenty of gummy ship flights to get Sora to his destination. Dives kind of look like the same old bullet hell. Mechanically, maybe, but let me put a different spin on it. Remember the tutorial in the very first Kingdom Hearts game? It's known as the Dive to the Heart. Now think about how many times characters have been shown plummeting through the sky in this series. It's a pretty iconic animation at this point. Dives are an opportunity to actually play out those moments. We don't just have to watch Sora and Riku fall to the ground like meteorites. We get to take control of them and fly through special missions on our way down to the surface. Our heroes get different goals during these dives, further distancing the 2 sides of the story from one another. Some of these are boss fights, some challenge us to collect a certain number of prizes, but they all feel different and exciting. The dive mechanic even gets used in-world when fighting Chernobog at the end of Symphony of Sorcery, making it one of the most standout battles in the entire game. Now wait a minute, I heard me say distance there. That's the last D word, right? It is. Like Nomura said, there's a divide between Sora and Riku here. A divide that plays out in the physical, mechanical, and philosophical parts of their stories. The physical differences are the easiest to see. They have different objectives and paths through each level. This is seen in its purest form in Prankster's Paradise, indicated even by the level's logo, which shows a divide between the Great Whale Monstro and the amusement park. Sora's events at the amusement park lead up to Pinocchio being swallowed in the first place. Riku's tell of a time when Pinocchio wandered off into the bowels of the whale. This is the biggest divide in any of the worlds, with not a single area shared between our two heroes. And there are plenty of other examples of this split level design. One of my favorites is Symphony of Sorcery, which is divided by the seasons. Sora's portion represents summer and spring, and Riku's represents fall and winter. When both complete their tasks and reunite the two Sound Idea music sheets, they're able to clear their respective levels. A great example of how the stories in all of these worlds are connected.
Two forces are better than one. Right, Riku?
Sora and Riku also play differently. Those lovely Dream Eaters aren't just party members. They can also directly team up with our heroes. Sora links up with them for special attacks, while Riku absorbs their powers to take on different forms. This directly reflects their philosophical differences. They approach their tasks in each world very differently. Sora is driven by helping others. Just look at how quick he is to join Neku in Traverse Town.
I don't know about any game, but can I help?
What? Time out. Do you trust every total stranger you meet?
Riku, on the other hand, is driven by self-improvement. He succumbed to the darkness once, and he sees reflections of that failure in other characters.
He won't listen. Once you've fallen that far, there's almost no coming back.
The distance between them is both external and internal. They're on different sides of each world, sure, but it goes deeper than that. Sora is the goody two-shoes. Riku is the bad guy turned hero. That drives every part of their story and gameplay. In Riku's defense, we all have a dark side. Oh, that was weird. Now, there's also something to be said for the distance that Sora and Riku can cover on their own. The final standout mechanic in this game for me is Flowmotion. This is basically a fancy form of parkour, opening up the combat in this game to all sorts of wild moves. You can kick off walls, spin around enemies, and generally dance about the battlefield so much more than any previous game in the series. It's also great for exploration. Grinding along the roller coaster track in Prankster's Paradise is a delight. These new worlds were constructed around this movement, and that goes for the new sections of original worlds too. The post office in Traverse Town is an early example of just how fun grinding can be.
Yes.
Flowmotion changes how you explore these levels. Consider the opening mouth area of Monstro. Riku can freely jump and air dash around to collect all the chests there. In the original Kingdom Hearts, you needed high jump and glide to make that happen. You do get high jump after a trampoline fight on Sora's side of this level, but it doesn't really matter. Flowmotion completely changes how you get around. It even allows for the best kind of wall jumping. The kind where you can kick your way up a single wall without needing to ping-pong Super Mario 64 style. In fact, Flowmotion is such a great addition to the series that it became a centerpiece of Kingdom Hearts 3. The same can't be said for Split Stories or Pet Dream Eaters, but boy howdy did Flowmotion deserve to stick around. Alright, we did it. We talked about all 3 D words and ignored that ugly watermark. Seriously? On my own footage? You know what? Go ahead and play this game by whatever method you think is fair. Kingdom Hearts Dream Drop Distance did something really different. Those 3 D words don't just make for a fancy title. They are indicative of all the experimentation that happened here. The sleeping, dreaming worlds were an excuse to create a totally fresh set of Disney levels to explore, and the Dream Eaters that plague them could be recruited to your side, Pokemon style. Dropping, or diving to each level was not only a smart spin on Gummy Ship missions, but also a nice nod to all the heart diving that the series is known for. The drop mechanic itself was technically impressive, letting you shift between 2 sides of the story at any time, picking up right where you left off. Those split stories cover the distance part of the title, but Sora and Riku could also literally cover great distances using Flowmotion. Most of these ideas were never seen again after this game, but that doesn't mean they weren't successful. If anything, it makes them even more special, because there's only one place to go to experience them. Kingdom Hearts 3D marked a major shift from the norm for the series, and it was a shift for me too, bringing me into the gaming press. It's a journey for Sora and Riku to find themselves and grow stronger, and in some ways, I did the same. That's all very personal, of course, so I can't promise you'll get as deep of a connection with the game as I did. But what I can guarantee is that the Kingdom Hearts 3D experience is unlike any other game in the series. Hey, thank you so much for watching this video. If you like what Framework is doing, definitely hit that subscribe button in the middle. It would help me out an awful lot if you do. And if you want to see what we've already cooked up, you can hit that link on the far left. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.